Hello my dear sewing friends, it's Alisa here and welcome to Hack My Clothes. It's a series where we use quality techniques to update your clothes, make them more functional, and bring them back to life. Now, last time in this series, we've learned how to add a pocket to a garment that doesn't have any. But today, we're going to tackle one of the very popular requests, and that is how to hack your skirt into a pair of pants. And after that, if you want, you can add a pocket to it. So you see, everything is connected. Now, before we begin, I do want to say that sometimes in life, and of course in sewing, there are cases when the easiest solution is also the best solution. However, in my opinion, this isn't one of those cases. I've been asked about this method of transforming a skirt into a pair of pants many times, so I decided that today we're going to do this as an experiment and not as an actual garment that I'm going to wear later. Now in this series, I've hacked 3 skirts into a pair of pants. So at the end, we're going to compare the simplest method with a more complex method so that way you can see the differences in the outcomes. But for this one, you will need just a couple of things. You will need some pins, you will need a marking tool for your fabric, you will need a pair of scissors, and of course something to sew it all with together, like a hand sewing needle and thread or a sewing machine. First, of course, we're going to assess the garment that we're working with because that is going to give you the best success. This skirt is about an ankle length, but you can choose your own length. It is woven, there's no stretch to the fabric whatsoever, but a really important feature that you must look in a skirt that you want to hack is that it has enough width in it, and this one features a gathered waist. Mine is elasticated, but if you have a skirt like this that has an invisible zipper in a side seam, it will also work for this hack. Also keep in mind the drape of the fabric. You want something that drapes beautifully because that is going to contribute to a better outcome. Avoid fabrics that are too thick. If your skirt's fabric does crease easily, please do give it a quick press before we get started because otherwise those creases and folds can create discrepancy between one side and the other and uneven results altogether. And having a smooth surface to work on is going to make it easier for you to mark and sew. While you're at it, double check the care label for your garment so that way you know exactly the amount of heat that you can apply. For this next step, go ahead and put on pants in which you like the position of the crotch depth. That's this part right over here. Next, take the skirt and put it on top of the pants wrong side out. With feet at shoulder width, bring in the front and the back of the skirt together right below your crotch level and pinch it together. Once you have it, place a pin and then carefully take off the skirt. Now currently my pin sits about 11.5 inches below the waistband seam. So this is the seam that connects the skirt and the waistband, and the pin sits right here. I want to add about ½ an inch to this measurement, so we're going to take 12 inches and make a mark. Next, I'm going to repeat that but a little bit to the left. I'm going to align the top of the measuring tape with the same placement of where the waistband comes with the skirt. Measure down 12 inches and once again make a mark. We're going to repeat it on both sides, left and right. Once you're done, you should be able to connect your markings with a line. This is the line on the front of the skirt. Now we're going to repeat the same on the back of the skirt. Notice that the back skirt panel also has a center back seam, which is really helpful. What we're going to do next is we're going to bring the side seams together. So I'm taking the middle of the skirt, bringing this up. Now I want to make sure that the side seams align and I'm bringing the top together. You can pin it to make sure that it stays put. Now I'm going to bring in this side seam with the other side seam together. And once again, give it a quick pin. We're going to do another one a little bit lower and one at the hem. So this is the back of the skirt, this is the front of the skirt pinned at the side seam. We're going to turn it and we're interested in the fold that's created right over here. From the line that we have marked earlier, we want to start taking down about 1.5 inches and making a mark, and we want to do it all the way to the hem. Now we're going to connect it in a straight line, but here at the top we're going to create a little arch out of it. So we're going to curve it in. When done with the front, let's repeat the same on the back pattern piece. Since I do have a center back seam, here I need to make sure that I measure 1.5 inches, not from the edge, but actually from this stitch line. Once we have markings on the back and on the front, let's do our best to transfer these to the other side of the skirt as well. Then the next step would be to take it, open this up, and bringing the skirt like it should be. So side seam, front and back. This black dashed line marks what we outlined on the front. Now I'm going to bring it to what we have outlined on the back pattern piece like this, and pin it together. I'm also going to pin it on this side and double check that it does indeed match what I've marked on the other side. We only get one go at this, so before cutting anything, let's baste it together right on the black dashed line. Once the basting is done, let's go ahead and put this on ourselves exactly like this, wrong side out. And here I think you can clearly see why at the beginning of this video I referenced this method as the easiest but not the one that would yield the best result. It does create extra volume in the crotch, and in some cultures it is the type of pant that is being worn quite often, but it's definitely not the type of pant that we think of in the classic sense of pants or trousers. Also, when simply bringing the front and the back together and sewing like this, you have to keep in mind that it's going to pull up the hemline from the middle. So that is going to be something that you will need to problem solve after. When you have successfully double-checked the range of motion in these new pants, now it is time to sew them together. At the sewing machine, we're going to choose just a simple straight stitch. Starting with the back stitch and at the hem of the skirt, we're going to stitch all the way. Now this is where basting your project really comes in handy, because in order to achieve a really nice, smooth and straight line, all you have to do now is follow your basting stitches that you did a little bit earlier. When you have reached the curved area of the crotch, place your hands on the fabric and slowly pivot it as you sew. That should create a really nice and smooth stitch line. When you have reached the hem of the skirt, make another back stitch. When done, first we're going to remove the basting stitches and then cut about 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch away from the stitch line. When cutting, make sure that you cut towards the middle, not towards the outside. Now that this area is cut, we will need to finish the raw edges so that way they don't fray during wear and wash. Use the piece of the fabric that we just cut out as your test and see which stitch is going to do the job. For me, it was this tightly spaced zigzag. So what you want to do is make sure that this stitch is right on the edge of the cut fabric. You want to complete like this all of the raw edges, and once done, it's going to look like this. Also, don't forget to do a back stitch at the beginning and at the end. After that, of course, we want to give our project a really good press, first from the wrong side and then from the right side of the project. At this point, you can try it on. If you like it, that's great. If you don't, you can of course always adjust a little bit. And I personally think that this type of pant always looks a little bit better if right here at the hem, we actually create a sort of like a gathered cuff. For that, here at the hem, we're going to start by folding it into the inside and pressing it. I'm using a 3/8 of an inch elastic, so I'm going to fold it in by about 1/2 an inch, not counting this little hem. Once we have pressed this hem all the way around, we are going to sew it about a little bit more than 3/8 of an inch away from the edge, so that way the elastic would fit through. And then here in the back, we're going to leave about 2-inch opening, so that way we can actually put this through. You can also sew it from the wrong side, you can sew it from the right side, whichever way is easier for you. You can also pin it to keep everything together, and we're going to be using just a regular straight stitch with a back stitch at the beginning and at the end. To keep the stitch line straight, which is really important in this case, use the guides on the needle plate. If your sewing machine doesn't have any, you can always create your own by using removable tape. Here's what we're going to have, and here is that little opening for our elastic, and we can snip off these little threads so that way they are not in the way. Here I've cut my elastic to be about 11 inches long, and we're going to attach one end to a large safety pin. Then let's push the safety pin and the elastic through the casing that we just created. But remember not to forget to secure the opposite end of the elastic, so that way we don't accidentally pull it through. Once I've reached the other end with my elastic, I'm going to pull it out of the casing, take off the safety pin, and also unpin the other end. Then I'm going to overlap them. In the overlapped part, I'm going to stitch quite well a couple of times back and forth really well with a zigzag stitch, so that way it really holds it together. The last step to complete for this cuff is to close up this opening. Usually I start by placing my project underneath the presser foot, and then I lower the presser foot and the needle inside of the project. After that, I straighten out the fabric by stretching the elastic and then start sewing. For that, we're also going to use just a straight stitch with a back stitch at the beginning and at the end. It might feel a little bit awkward to do, but it really isn't that big of a deal. After trying it on one last time, I'm still not happy with the crotch area, just because I simply do not like this type of crotch to begin with. So I figure if I bring the waistband a little bit together at the center front of these pants, it might hide that awkwardness of the crotch a little bit. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. The waistband of the skirt here is placed right sides together, and all we need is just a straight stitch. First, however, I'm going to do a straight stitch without any back stitches because I want to make sure that everything aligns nice and neat. Once I have verified that, then I can do another straight stitch with the back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Now let's finally take a look at before, where we started with just a simple gathered skirt, and after, where we transformed it into a pair of pants. Now let's compare this result to the other two skirt to pants transformations, so that way you can see the differences. Well, there you have it, a skirt to pants transformation. If you want to see other hacks for your clothing in this series, then click right over here. I have an entire season for these type of hacks that will make your wardrobe wearable and functional again. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon in another video. Bye!